I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents.
Think religion and politics don't mix? We'll hear from a college professor with strong ideas on the subject.
This is an important moment. We never stop trying to pass laws that do many different things.
Meet one of the artists who'll meet the Pope. And from small-town girl to big-city saint, she's the first American to be canonized.
When we honor Mother Cabrini, the saint, we're honoring someone who really cared for the poor, cared for children, and who cared for people in another culture.
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us this Friday night. Well, there's no doubt about it. Abortion has been at the forefront of the recent healthcare debate. One place where it has become very heated is Rhode Island.
That's right. A Rhode Island lawmaker from a very prominent Catholic political family criticized U.S. bishops for not supporting health care reform that included federal funding of abortion.
That prompted his bishop to shoot back, and that has then set off a firestorm of debate within the bigger debate. CNN's Tom Foreman has those details.
In the growing church-state war over abortion in the health bill, one target is Congressman Patrick Kennedy. He's Catholic, and a Rhode Island bishop is suggesting that because he did not go along with a church anti-abortion effort in the health care reform bill, he should leave the faith.
If you freely choose to be a Catholic, it means that you believe certain things, you do certain things. If you cannot do all of that in conscience, then you should perhaps feel free to go somewhere else.
At issue is a few pages in the massive bill, the Stupak-Pitts Amendment, which bans almost all abortion coverage for women who would enroll in the proposed public option.
This is a bipartisan amendment.
In the House, groups against abortion rights threatened to bring the whole bill down if the amendment was not approved. Many lawmakers fought back, saying it would impose new abortion limits, but the majority swallowed hard and passed it anyway to keep the overall bill alive.
The bill is passed.
Am I happy with that bill? Absolutely not.
Now, Planned Parenthood and others are scrambling to make sure the idea is dropped in the Senate.
In the end, we would be very hard-pressed to support any bill that had the Stupak Amendment in it, because I think it's bad for American women.
Now, while some say the church should not be so closely involved in public policy debates, others say it's both a right and a duty, and that the church and its leaders have to speak up.
Last night at St. Vincent Ferrer Church in Midtown Manhattan, George Mason law professor Helen Alvarez, who was formerly pro-life spokesperson for U.S. bishops, well, she spoke at the church's annual St. Albert's Day lecture.
If you care about the common good, you are going to find yourself in the public arenas. You can't take care of the common good if you refuse to enter into the public arenas. And some people are called to speak about matters even that are very controversial. Gaudium et Spes from Vatican II has that marvelous line about the joys, the hopes, and the griefs. The human person are the joys, the hopes, and the griefs of the church. We're human, that's why we do it.
Everything that is human, God is deeply concerned with, and we as His creatures and followers of His Son, everything that is human concerns us too. Everything that's good and true about human nature. Nothing is left out of the consideration of the Christian, and that includes our social and public life together.
The claim is made that several things. One, that why should religious figures have a say in a piece of legislation that governs people of all faiths and no faith? And the other question is, aren't we legislating a particular religious precept? So there's two questions in there. The idea that abortion is killing is agreed upon, frankly, by a large majority of people. Even some people who support its legality think it's killing. So the fact that it would be prevented in law is not a matter of a religious belief. It's a reasonable belief that the law should not support abortion. As for bishops speaking about it, they're citizens too. The group of Catholics are citizens too. Other people can speak too. Someone's going to win the argument. Hopefully it's the person with the better argument. That was the case on taking abortion out of federal health care.
I think there's different ways in which Christians, the church does this. Obviously, the bishops have their role to play as public leaders, and they speak on political matters as religious leaders, but also as citizens. The clergy in their parishes address these issues as pastors of a flock, helping their people to understand the moral, the legal, the religious principles that go into forming Christian arguments. But it's really finally up to the layperson, and in families and communities and neighborhoods, really to be on the front lines, arguing these things.
This is an important moment. We never stop trying to pass laws that do many different things, that keep immigrant families united, provide vaccines in the third world, stop killing. We never stop on any of those. This is a large and publicly visible behavior on health care because it would have been the largest expansion of federal spending to fund abortion since abortion was legalized. The abortion has been legal since 1973. But even in all that time, no one has suggested putting this much money into it until now.
How much involvement is too much involvement? Well, that's like asking how much truth is too much or how much justice is too much. As long as these remain the concern of any person who engages in public debate, whether they're a believer or an unbeliever, there won't be too much discussion as long as truth, justice, and the promotion of the common good is the object. I mean, that's the goal. And therefore, we don't stop speaking until we achieve those goals.
Well, stay tuned. There's much more current straight ahead. When we return, the day's headlines including how lawmakers in the state and the nation's capital may soon cast deciding votes on gay marriage.
And he's painted mosaics of Catholic history, and he'll soon meet the Pope.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Coming up just a bit later, a saint from New York who can help you find a new parking spot, and maybe a few words to spell that one out for me. Yeah, well, an expert was going to explain all that.
But first, let's have a look at today's headlines. Same-sex marriage bills in New York State and Washington, D.C. are likely to come up for full votes soon. The New York Senate this week delayed taking up a gay marriage bill, but leaders in Albany say they will vote soon on the legislation. Reports say supporters there are having a tough time drumming up support from some state lawmakers. Meantime, the D.C. City Council will take up a gay marriage bill in a few weeks after a committee approved it this week. The bill does not require churches to perform same-sex weddings. The Washington Archdiocese, though, says the bill will require them to not discriminate against gays and lesbians for social services, and that may cause them to stop offering some programs. The Catholic Church needs to leave its ghetto and utilize the internet to reach people around the world. That statement from French Bishop Jean-Michel Defalco at the start of a 4-day meeting of European bishops concerned about the media. It's taking place at the Vatican. Bishop Defalco says by not using the internet, you cut yourself off from a large part of people's lives. Well, Pope Benedict seems to have gotten that message. A Vatican spokesman says the pontiff has an appreciation for new developments in technology and that he regularly uses the internet and email.
So progressive. Okay, well, the U.S. isn't the only place where faith and society collide. After a court ruled crucifixes must be removed from public schools in Italy, officials there have done just the opposite. They've hung even more crucifixes. One mayor says doing so does not affect the dignity of anyone because the crucifix is one of the country's cultural references. Well, you're not likely to see conflict like that at the Vatican with its collection of art that spans centuries. As we hear from Rome Reports, one of the many artists who will meet the Pope later on this month has painted a mosaic of the church history.
You probably recognize the style of these mosaics. They decorate the Redemptoris Mater Chapel in the Vatican. But you've probably never seen the man who made them. Meet Marco Rubnik, an artist convinced that art is the best way to communicate faith.
I want to communicate and give testimony to the love of God for man, the amazing design and work of the redemption that comes with salvation.
Today, Marco Rupnik is showing off his latest work of art in the Basilica of San Giovanni Rotondo in southern Italy, the hometown of Padre Pio. In these mosaics, Rupnik tells a threefold story of the lives of Jesus, St. Francis, and Padre Pio. It's an ambitious series of mosaics that tries to decipher the identity of a saint. In order to do so, the artist compares each saint to Jesus Christ.
We're talking about an area of more than 2,000 square meters of mosaics, 18 scenes from the life of Christ, 18 scenes from the life of St. Francis, and 18 from the life of Padre Pio.
This is one of 55-year-old Marco Rupnik's few public appearances. He's a native of Slovenia. Today, he's a professor at the Gregorian University in Rome, where he himself studied. Besides being a professor, he still finds the time to create beautiful works of art like these.
Art has a way of communicating the mystery of faith that adapts to humanity today, because it draws and fascinates people. It's not a constructive or argumentative logic.
That's why Marco Rupnik continues to work in his Rome studio, where he creates beautiful mosaics that, aside from producing a sense of awe for those who admire them, they inspire people to contemplate the role of God in their lives.
They're so gorgeous and they're so intricate and detailed. It's nice to see that they're all there, and you can also find them in other places, sometimes where you least expect it, on the floors or sometimes even in the conference room here or there.
I know. We have one here of Monsignor Dempsey, the founder of the Prayer Channel, which is the predecessor to NET.
We do.
And he said it was so funny because for that day when we had the open house and people were coming in and getting tours and everything like that, Monsignor Dempsey said, you know, I was really kind of taken aback when I saw it, because usually they only will do a mosaic like that of you if you're dead.
Right, or Saint.
Right.
Often. It's an honor, and it's lovely, and it's beautiful.
There you go. There you go. Well, stay tuned. They've got much more currents coming up straight ahead.
Coming up, it's a heritage you may not be aware of. Black Catholic History Month.
We were made from the earth, and we continue to give God the best that we have.
Welcome back to Currents. Well, you may not be aware of it, but November is Black Catholic History Month, and we wanted to find out more on what it's all about. So now I'm joined by Georgianne Campbell, and she is the chairperson of the African American Apostolate of the Brooklyn Diocese. Georgianne, thank you so much for being with us here on Currents today.
Thank you for having me here today to share with you the rich heritage that we want people to hear about, that we bring during Black Catholic History Month.
Tell us a little bit about why Black Catholic History Month exists, and also some of the work that you're doing in the events that you have coming up here in Brooklyn over the weekend.
Okay. Very briefly, the Black Catholic History Month was begun in 1990 by the Black Catholic Clergy Caucus. And it was done to make more people aware of what we do and the gifts that we bring to this church. It's also the time of year that we celebrate and remember All Souls and All Saints. Mm-hmm. It's a time when we celebrate and remember the our saints, St. Martin de Porres and St. Augustine.
Which is today, right?
Which is today, exactly.
A lot of people don't even know that he was black.
Exactly, exactly. And when you hear Hippo, you don't always think of black, but it's wonderful when you know that Hippo is in the African region.
Sure. So tell us about what you're doing over the weekend. I know you have an event coming up on Sunday.
Okay. The event coming up on Sunday is a very special occasion. As black people, we love to celebrate and we love to worship in high honor and give God high honor and praise. So on Sunday, we're having a Vesper service, which is a celebration where the community of Catholics from both Brooklyn and Queens will join in one celebration. It will be glorious. It will be include all areas of the population, young, old, and in between. Mm-hmm. It's an opportunity for us to let our youth see the contributions of the people whose backs they're walking on, mm-hmm. And it's an opportunity for the elders to pour a little salt in our wounds and remind us of the status they have in our community.
Right, right. Give them a little bit tip of the hat.
Exactly.
Why have an African American apostolate? Some people might say, well, gee, that's a little bit more divisive. I mean, why not just have one big unified church? Isn't that what the Catholic Church is supposed to be? And there are other people that will say their perception is it's perhaps a white church, you know. So tell me a little bit more about why this apostolate exists.
It's necessary to have an African American apostolate because of the gifts and contributions made by African Americans. They continue to excel in working toward their Catholicity. They have persevered even during times when they weren't welcome in the church. They have stayed in the church. They've raised their children as Catholic, and they've made a home here and a place here. And they're rooted and dug in, and they intend to stay. So it's a time to celebrate that.
Well, that is what this month is all
Exactly.
about. And there is really quite a diaspora within the Black Catholic contingent, if you will,
Yes,
right?
there is.
There's African American, which you represent, but
Yes.
there's also a lot of other
Caribbeans.
Yep.
African Americans, I mean from Africa itself. And we have interracial couples as well. So anytime that you have any mixture of Black, it's important to celebrate that Blackness, because that's one of the most beautiful colors that God has given us. We were made from the earth, and we continue to give God the best that we have.
And how, beyond the celebration and like the event that you'll have this weekend, obviously this is a special month, how do you work with the community, with the African American Catholic community, to continue to celebrate and put people in touch with their faith and with their roots?
Well, it's very important for us at the Vicariate of Black Catholic Concerns to acknowledge all phases and areas of our community. For example, in September, we had a wisdom group brunch where we acknowledged and respected our elders in a very special way. We're planning a follow-up with a retreat for them in March because we want them to know how much we appreciate them. We're working on putting together a youth summit for our youth to bring together activities and talk about subjects that's important to them. We are planning the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Day celebration in January, and we're looking forward to a trip to the Mother of Africa Shrine, and we're making a pilgrimage to Washington in June.
Wow, got a lot of great events planned, and a
yes.
great one coming up this weekend, Georgianne. We really appreciate you being here
Thank
to
you.
celebrate this special
Thank
month
you.
with you. Well, stay tuned. There is much more current straight ahead.
Coming up, on a mission from the Pope, this saint made her mark in the Big Apple.
She is my go-to person when it comes to finding a parking space.
Well, finally, today is the feast day of St. Frances Cabrini. Despite her very Italian name, she's actually the very first American citizen to be declared a saint.
And although she died in 1917, she is still one of the most talked about saints, especially right here in New York, the place that she made her permanent home.
We recently had a chance to visit her final resting spot at Mother Cabrini High School in Manhattan's Washington Heights neighborhood. I just used to live right down the street from there, actually.
And there you go. And we also got some insight on this saint in the city from the man who's written the book on the saints, Father James Martin of America Magazine.
Frances Xavier Cabrini is the first American saint. There are other people who are the first American born. There's a lot of different sort of distinctions, but really, she's the first American saint. She's most known for her work with Italian immigrants in New York City, and also for her work in founding orphanages. She was born in Italy in 1850, and like many of the saints, she had a reputation for piety and holiness when she was young. She wanted to join a religious congregation, a congregation of sisters, but she was refused because of poor health. What she does instead is she starts to work at an orphanage. And the local bishop was so impressed by her work with the orphanage that he asks her to start a religious congregation, which she does, the Missionaries of the Sacred Heart. They're very successful, and they're asked by Archbishop Corrigan in New York City to come over to New York City and to found some orphanages in New York. She goes to Pope Leo XIII to ask him permission. Pope Leo says to her, not to the east, but to the west you will go. So Mother Cabrini and her missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart land in New York in 1889. However, Archbishop Corrigan tells her, well, the scheme for the orphanage has fallen through. So guess what? You have to go back to Italy. And Mother Cabrini, being a pretty strong woman, says, "I'm not going back to Italy because the Pope sent me here." Her missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart open up orphanages all over the place, and she's very successful. She's caring mainly for Italian immigrants at the time who really were at a loss for people to care for them. She dies in 1917, worn out really after many years of labor at the age of 61, and she's canonized. Most people still call her Mother Cabrini in New York City.
I met so many sisters, they knew her, and they said she was like a mother. She loved the sisters, and she did anything for the sisters. And she was she wanted to do everything fast for God.
She is, as one biographer said, as strict as she is just. She was a very sort of steely, strong-willed woman.
She wanted the things how she wanted. If they did something wrong, she corrected them. But at the same time, she was very sweet with the sisters.
She is my go-to person when it comes to finding a parking space. A little jokey prayer that I heard is, Mother Cabrini, please find a spot for my little machine-y. I think Mother Cabrini, having spent most of her life in New York City, understands what it's like to be in a big metropolis and maybe need a little help from time to time in your parking needs.
When I came in this country, I could speak English, and I didn't think I'm going to be able to be a sister. But thank God I found a priest who spoke Italian, and he said to me, "No, you go to Gabriel, you'll be happy there." And it's truth.
When we honor Mother Cabrini, the saint, we're honoring someone who really cared for the poor, cared for children, and who cared for people in another culture. I think Mother Cabrini is a really important model to show that the church is universal and that the church makes no distinctions between someone from one country or another. They are just as Catholic as a person who's been here their whole lives.
I love that. I've got to start using that prayer, the parking prayer.
You don't even have a car anymore. What are you talking about?
Well, when I rent one, because I do have to drive, I like to drive rather than fly sometimes.
Yes.
Although I am kind of getting over that, but anytime I am in a car, I'm definitely going to use that from now on, because you know how hard it is to find a space around here sometimes.
Yeah, oftentimes, especially downtown. Around this neighborhood, not so bad. But it's so funny because they're talking about how the Italians at the time, she was there to really facilitate their entree into the U.S. And my grandparents, relatives, everybody came through Ellis Island and all of that and didn't speak Italian to their children at the time because they didn't want them to be outcast. They wanted them to be integrated, whereas now it's really seen as a source of pride to be able to speak your language and be able to really celebrate that. So it's very funny how things have changed, but obviously, she truly made it a lot easier for people to come here when they were just trying to start to get settled in the U.S.
Right, definitely did some very good work. And, little did I know all of this as I would walk by Mother Cabrini High School on my way to, Fort Tryon Park every day when I used to live in that neighborhood. So it's very good to know all the great work that she did.
Yeah, absolutely. We love it.
Well, that's it for this edition of Currents. Remember, you can always catch us online. We're there at currentsny.net.
We're also on Twitter. The address there is twitter.com/currentsny. So for all of us here at Currents, I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend.